Hi everyone, thanks for tuning in. Today's guest couldn't be more different. First, well, one's male and the other's female, but they've had different careers, different lifestyles, and yet they're the same. They have commonalities. Is that a word? Well, whatever. They've both lived outside of North America. How that happened, again, that's different. Have I piqued your curiosity? It's time for us to get to know them, and we're going to start with Bev McGregor.
Hi, Nancy.
Hi, Bev.
How are you?
I'm good. Thank you so much for coming.
Thanks for having me.
Have a seat. Okay, right there.
Thank you.
All right, so thanks again for being on the show.
Thank you very much for having me.
I want to start off by asking you, are you from Chilliwack?
I was raised in Rosedale from birth until I spread my wings in '78 and flew out to Calgary, and then on to Revelstoke, Vancouver, and eventually backpacking in Australia.
Oh, you're going to have to tell me about that. That sounds fascinating.
It was an amazing adventure.
So how old were you when you decided to go backpacking in Australia?
21 years old, all by myself, with just a backpack on my pack.
But what made you at 21 decide to go off such a, I hear about people going backpacking through Europe, right? But why Australia?
Well, I had a connection there. My sister's father-in-law, unfortunately, him and his wife in Chilliwack divorced, and he ended up in Australia, and he was my pen pal since I was in grade 1. And when he remarried an Australian lady, he brought her back to Canada, and her name was also Bev, hit it off very well, and she kind of encouraged me to come and have a look at the place and wander down under.
Oh, right. Sounds really great. How long did you do that for?
About a year and a half. I flew from Seattle. But the funny part of this is that I was always the chicken. I would never stay away from home. So everyone had bets that I'd be home within a couple of days. And I had a open ticket and a working permit. And that's so I flew out of Seattle to LA, stayed in Fiji for a while.
Oh,
backpacked
nice.
around there, and then off to Sydney, and then to Auckland, and all over both islands in New Zealand. And I worked my way. I worked at the Sydney Opera House, setting up when people come to conventions and things like that, catering and stuff like that. And I worked in a really trendy little neighborhood called Balmain in a Mexican restaurant called Pepe's. So that's how I earned my money to fund my adventures.
Well, what did you leave behind? Like you were working, obviously.
I was working downtown Vancouver, and I just thought, one day I was having my lunch, and I opened up the Sun newspaper, and it said, Anza Travel Club. And so that was another sign to me that Australia is calling my name. So I called them up. They got all the visas and things in place for me that I needed, and I sold off all my possessions, and away I went.
That's so marvelous. I think it's very adventuresome of you, or very brave, I think, because a lot of time people are afraid of what they don't know. So to do something like that certainly is something you don't know what you're going to see on the other end. But I guess having somebody there makes a big difference.
It did make a big difference. That certainly helped. And I stayed with them for the first part of my adventure for about 4 or 5 weeks. And then I ventured out on my own and traveled up the coast, up to Queensland, and up further to northern Queensland and all those lovely places in between, and down south. And then I settled in Sydney and got a job and earned some more money. And every day was like a holiday because everything was a new experience for me being there.
Right. So you came back to Chilliwack?
I did.
What did that feel like?
Well, I felt like I wanted to go back to Australia, and I did. About 6 months later, I met my future husband. I had 2 wonderful children with him, and I stayed there almost a total of 9 years, 9.5. And then when the marriage dissolved, I thought, you know what? I come from a very close-knit family here. My kids need to have that, and knowing their grandparents and having the support. Mm-hmm. And so I came back, but it was a big adjustment after being away for a long time.
So have you done any other traveling after that?
I took my kids on an adventure backpacking Central America, Costa Rica, and Panama in particular.
Marvelous.
And in the jobs I've had, I've been very fortunate. I've been all over the United States. When I turned 50, my sister-in-law, who actually was my roommate in Australia, and I played Cupid with her and my brother, and we went on an adventure of 6 countries backpacking in Europe, and eventually going to Scotland and going to my niece's wedding.
Wow. Okay, so let's backtrack just a little bit. You mentioned, fortunately, your job allowed you to travel. What kind of job was that?
Well, I came back and I went to school. I took my CNA, which was a certified network administrating, and I got a job with a company called System Modal Software, which was a proprietary software company who developed software, a diagnostic tool for chiropractors and naturopathic physicians. And most of our clients were in the United States. So as part of my job, about every 2 months, I was sent somewhere in the States to what they called a boot camp to facilitate and train these doctors and chiropractors and such on the use of the software and how to market it in their business.
Right. Okay, so you're well-traveled. Is there a place there you haven't been that you would like to go?
I would love to go to Ireland. I never made it there. And also, I would really love to go to Peru and visit the Inca ruins.
Oh, nice.
I would love to go to the Great Wall and just walk amongst the ancient history there.
Absolutely. So how old are your children now?
Well, my son Brandon, he's 29, and my daughter Kadria is going to be 28 in July.
Okay.
And I have 4 grandchildren, Alex, Taylor, Jackson, Emery Ray, and a new one arriving in July, and they've already named him Erwin James.
Very nice. So, Bev, in your bio, you mentioned that you had cancer.
Yes, I did. I was diagnosed with breast cancer in August of 2012. Thankfully, I'm still here to talk about it. But I just want people to be aware of, there's so many pitfalls that can happen to a person that falls through the cracks of society on that journey, which you shouldn't have to.
Okay, can you explain what that means? Because I'm not sure I know.
Okay, well, I'll start with what happened. I had a really wonderful job here in Chilliwack, and 3 weeks prior to my diagnosis, I was let go because of the downturn in the economy at the time. Went on EI, and I was still actively seeking employment, and then my mammogram came up, and I knew something was wrong when they phoned me before I even got home on my cell phone to tell me I needed to come back the next day. So I went in, and it just worked out very well for me in this part of it. From the day that I went back, they told me I'm going to have a biopsy. They introduced me to a surgeon there, and they said they could tell by looking that they would bet money on it that it was a cancerous tumor. And just devastating to hear that news. And I'm so thankful for my family and friends during that time. And so I was like, okay. So the next step was the biopsy, and they determined at this time that I actually had 2 tumors. So this meant a mastectomy and chemo, and they weren't sure about radiation until the markers and everything came back and they can determine what kind of treatment protocol. So everyone's telling me, do not tell EI that you have cancer, because as soon as your benefits run out, they won't extend you your benefits beyond that, because you only get 15 weeks of medical EI. And I'm like, no, that can't be true. I'm an honest person. I'm just going to be honest. So I had my breast off on September 27th, which is kind of an adjustment. And dealing with all these things, being a single person and raising my kids without any support for the past 24 years takes a hit on your ability to have any kind of savings. So I was terrified of losing my place, using up my meager savings. And then, EI told me, so sad, too bad. November, you're off benefits. That's all you get for medical. And I'm not eligible to go on regular EI because I'm deemed not eligible, willing, or able to work.
Oh my goodness.
So before I even started chemo, which I had 9 rounds of, I'm told I have no income. Pretty devastating, and trying to get help within the provincial legislation of assistance. I didn't qualify because I had a vehicle that was worth not much more than they're allowed of, I think it was $2,500. Right. I wasn't eligible for any of their money. You have to use your own money first, right, basically. Right. and there wasn't a lot of that either. So every place I turned, there was something. And then when I got into treatment, which started in November, chemo and radiation are covered by your BC Medical. And not everybody is in a situation that has a company that's paying their health benefits. So you're relying on your government, which you pay for. And then they tell me, we don't cover any of the other medications that are required. And there was steroids, anti-nauseas, and other pills to facilitate your wellness during your chemo. And none of this was covered. And some of those pills were $380 per pill.
Wow.
And that comes out of your pocket. And you need 19 per round times 9 rounds of chemo. Doesn't take long to eat up a lot of money. I could apply to the BC Cancer Agency, which I did. So I was eligible for a percentage of help towards those medications. But when you have no money in the beginning, the percentage doesn't matter. With another friend I met on this journey who was faced with the same thing, we met people, women especially, going through this who were losing their home, were forced not to take any of their treatments other than what was offered through the BC Medical, because simply they had no money to do this. And I know of one person who actually was forced to live in their car.
I had no idea that this happens here in Canada. I mean, this is the like stuff you hear about in the States, right?
That's correct, but it does happen here.
Wow. So where are you now?
Well, I had reconstruction, and that was another nightmare journey, and which has caused me to have anxiety and panic attacks, which have haunted me. I ended up having reconstruction, which didn't go well. I had a surgery, and it caused what they call a seroma. And all they kept doing was telling me they have to drain it. So I had these 2 testicle things, I called them. I tried to make light of it and say, I'm becoming a man. I put them in the front of my pants. It looks like I have testicles, just to kind of add some humor to it. But it wasn't going away. And eventually, after almost 2 years of wearing these, it was determined that they're going to have to do some surgery and try and drain this thing. Well, they took the drains out to see if it might heal on its own. But when they took the drains out, I got a massive infection. By the time I got home, my stomach was bright red. I was shaking and sweating and throwing up. I got so sick and weakened, I ended up being admitted into Royal Columbian, and 92 days of insanity in there.
Oh my goodness. That's been such a horrible experience for you. You know, I would love to talk about this more, but unfortunately we're totally out of time. So you're going to have to come back.
All right.
Okay, I hope you will do that.
Yes.
Right? Thank you for watching, but stay tuned. There's a whole other half.